Nervous. It is so brave of me coming here and speaking to academics because it's a long time since I was at university, and though I would dearly love a PhD, I just prefer to be an activist. This is the picture that haunted me as a child. It's the South African Boer War in 1899, now seen as a terribly unjust imperial war. In the middle, shotgun at his shoulder, is my grandfather, Jackie Hughes. Jackie was declared a hero and became a permanent soldier in the fledgling New Zealand Army for the next 20 years. Jackie always led the Wellington Anzac Day parade. Here my dad joins him in his sail. Oh. For some reason. There you go. My dad in his sailor suit. Well, Dad was a newborn when Jackie went to Gallipoli. His health was destroyed in that disastrous campaign, and he spent the next 6 months recuperating before being allowed home when my dad was 2. Despite feeling very bitter about how Jackie was mistreated after the war, when the Second World War broke up, my dad immediately signed up to fight the evil Hitler. But to me, it never made sense why people went to war. Surely there's a better way. I think I was a pacifist from a very young age. After I served 6 very challenging years as a token one, the only environmentalist on the regional council and fighting solitary the Ruatanawha Dam, as well as dealing with fracking and other things, I took some time out and went cycle touring with my husband in Europe. Our kids had all left home. A friend had told me about the Centennial Congress of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, or WILF, at the Peace Palace in The Hague. And we spent 6 days talking about peace and freedom and with 1,000 women from 33 countries. And the WILF is now talking about feminist peace as a thing, so you might like to look up that a bit more. While we were there, it was the 25th of April, the centenary of Anzac Day, and a small group of us we went to the Anzac Day commemoration out at the wharfs in The Hague, put on by the ambassadors, and presented this olive tree alongside all the wreaths from the military and everybody else that was there, in honour of the 100 years of women fighting or working very hard towards peace. Later on, we got permission to present it permanently at the Peace Palace, and with the blessing of the New Zealand and Australian ambassadors as well. So quite naturally, I just found myself promoting pacifism, and when we got home, I joined the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. First, we put on a Hiroshima Day ceremony at the Napier Cathedral. It was nearly 30 years since New Zealand had become nuclear free, and we were very proud. And now, of course, the United Nations, thank you, Kate, is a treaty in place to ban them. However, in Australia, things are not so good. It's a highly militaristic culture and very close to Uncle Sam. I found myself joining a long convoy from Melbourne to Alice Springs in the heart of the continent. It was the 50th year of the Pine Gap American military communications base, and there was a national peace convergence. From all over Australia they came, Greenham common women, Quakers, grannies, unionists, anarchists, activists, everyone supporting each other in different actions that they chose to undertake during this gathering, including locking themselves by the neck onto the gates of military companies and biking to the base, and some Quaker grannies who had tea parties in the middle of the road to stop the workers going to the Pine Gap gates. 6 peace pilgrims broke into the base and were arrested and charged, and are currently going through the court process in Alice Springs. facing up to 7 years for lamenting the cost of war on the children who are killed there. Like you, Moana, these folks are prepared to risk their freedom to make a difference, but it's a high cost to pay. And I'm hoping that we might be able to support these people in some way during this conference. There's a few gremlins in this room, you know. Yeah. Last November, there was a big party to celebrate the 75th birthday of the New Zealand Navy, and warships came here from all over the world. There was also a peace rally where we listened to the famous campaigner Dr. Helen Caldicott of the Physicians for Social Responsibility, warning of the continued dangers of nuclear war. We also organised a peace picnic on the waterfront where we made tea not war with Grannies for Peace and sang songs with Old Peace Band resurrected for the occasion. We made our point, I think, without alienating or upsetting the public while they inspected the warships. And we got media coverage for our cause in the Herald, as well as an online video clip and interview with Bobby Woodward. Getting media attention is a really important way, Isabel, as you know, of promoting pacifism by educating the public and growing support for the causes. This was followed by a blockade of the Arms Expo. The protest movement is alive and well in this country, but the nature of protest is changing. You need to be clever and dramatic, colourful and playful to gain media attention and promote your cause. The Defence Industry Association conference was shut down for a day and the business of war interrupted. I watched closely, but I wasn't brave enough to sit in like some of my older friends, including Ray here. The Auckland blockade was remarkable because it went on for 7 hours, like a sit-in. No one was hurt by the very disciplined police and protesters in their non-violent actions. And it was a big contrast to what happened in Wellington this year at the Weapons Expo. The venue, the Westpac Sports Stadium, was much harder to manage because it was large and circular with many entrances. But peace action protesters had blocked vehicle access with a rope attached to 2 brave mountaineers strung from a lamppost so that if the rope was cut they would go plummeting to the ground. In contrast to the previous year, the police were not neutral this time and actively shepherded the Weapons Expo attenders in via back gates alongside the busy traffic of Waterloo Quay. At least a dozen protesters and bystanders were injured by police as they were engaging with their non-violent direct actions. Meanwhile, disinformation was being circulated by the Expo organisers, claiming they weren't selling guns, while a TV report clearly showed munitions on display. Meanwhile, Quakers and others stood in silent vigil outside the railway station while the commuters came and go, alerting the public and sharing our concerns. The Mayor, Justin Lester, also said publicly that he didn't support a Weapons Expo being held in the City of Peace. Later, one of our number attended the AGM of the Westpac Stadium, got an item on the agenda and spoke to trustees for 4 minutes asking them to not glamorise defence by hosting the Weapons Forum in a stadium owned by the citizens of Wellington. We need more people to speak up on this so that our public venues aren't hosting these events. Earlier this year, I was part of a protest which has been going on for 30 years at Waihopai Spy Base in Blenheim, organised by the Anti-Bases campaign. You can see the huge 2 plastic domes, one of which, they helped the drones, one of which was punctured by activists a few years ago, and they actually managed to get off trial by jury by claiming they were defending people from harm by doing so. Those domes shelter the satellites which are part of the International Five Eyes network, which are feeding information about all of us into the American military machine and contributing to the suffering of innocents who are drone bombed overseas. For example, the children who have been hurt and killed by our soldiers in Afghanistan. It's crucial that we are kept informed about what is happening overseas. In our name, and our country needs to make amends for mistakes which might happen. Unlike previous times, the current wars are far from heroic and likely to be based on a thirst for oil. They cause civilian casualties of up to 90%. They use remote drone technology and result in many returning soldiers who suffer trauma for the rest of their lives. Also in May, we held a 3-day workshop of 45 peace people from all over the country at the Wanganui Quaker settlement, where we could educate ourselves, talk about actions and what we wanted to do and how groups work together. Quakers have been actively peacemaking for over 300 years. Here we are posing for the local newspaper in a peace sign formation. In July, I received the Sonia Davies Peace Award, went to Trump country to study peace literacy with the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, Paul Chappelle in Santa Barbara. Paul grew up as the son of a father who was black and in the army, and his mother was Korean. He suffered a lot of abuse, bullying, including family violence. He joined the military and became a captain, and then he just has dedicated his life to peace work and peace literacy. He basically talks about how we are not designed to make war. It is not natural. We have to be trained to treat the other people as less than human and to dehumanize our enemies. And the question is, so then, why can't we train ourselves for peace? Why don't we put the effort into peacemaking that do into war making? And how can we continue to care for ourselves, to become resilient, to continue this work for our lifetimes that it's going to take to end war? And when are we going to set up a ministry for peace? Recently I was asked to serve as the first national coordinator for the global peace group World Beyond War. Its 3 themes are divestment from weapons, education and closing military bases. Divestment is a major driver in current movements for change, such as divestment from fossil fuels and towards a green economy. Other organisations such as 350.org are already reporting success, and anecdotally I've heard that financial advisors are noticing a change in the culture reinvestment towards a green economy as well. It's not something perhaps that is well enough understood, but it's a work in progress, and many collaborations are taking place around the world with organisations such as Code Pink, Don't Bank on the Bomb, and World Beyond War, to name a few. These collaborations are so much easier with global communications, so accessible. Recently, 2 divestment conferences took place in Washington, DC, and they were both live streamed and recorded so that anyone can watch and learn. I did, and learned that, for example, the Nobel Foundation Fund has recently pulled out of several companies who are involved with nuclear weapons manufacturing. Another group, Don't Bank on the Bomb, publishes online information about organisations that have implemented a policy that comprehensively prevents any financial involvement in nuclear weapons producing companies. And it also lists the New Zealand Superannuation Fund, which has an exclusion policy, but one which could be improved upon. This information is freely available on the Don't Bank on the Bomb's website. Former politician turned filmmaker Andrew Feinstein has spoken publicly about the impact that a divestment campaign had on ending apartheid in South Africa. His new film, The Shadow World, looks at the dark side of weapons investing. But sometimes it seems like an uphill battle. After the huge global anti-war protests against the Iraq War in 2003, when 20 million people worldwide got out on the streets, it seemed like the peace movement gave up. Moana's colleague, Kieran O'Reilly, said that if 1% of those who protested had gone into non-violent resistance and the other 99% had supported them, we would have a buoyant anti-war movement today. Pope Francis says that it's an absurd contradiction to speak of peace while at the same time promote or permit the global arms trade. Is it a commercial war for selling weapons in illegal trade, and so that the merchants of death can get richer, he asks? Our newest and youngest MP, Chloe Swarbrick, champions the rich history of political protest in New Zealand. She says change won't come from the top down. Those who are profiting from the status quo are more than comfortable. Positive, inclusive change has to come from the grassroots, from people connecting with each other, sharing ideas and empathy. There's a peaceful, compassionate, happy revolution waiting in building community. There are plenty of examples of success that we could look at and take heart from, and there's strength from doing the right thing. I know one campaigner I was organised with the Cape Kidnappers when we actually, a handful of us, began the move to stop an American billionaire building on a protected area. It was a handful of people who began this. People said we were crazy, but by the end of that campaign, when we'd done all the education, when we'd fundraised and we actually won the battle in our court and in our environmental court, and everybody then supported us, nearly everybody. But there needs to be a start happening. As new National Coordinator for Global Network World Beyond War, I'm committed to this work and I invite you to join. Please sign up and join me to embody peace in the world for the sake of ourselves, our families and our planet. Thank you.